For today's Ask Me Anything session, we're chatting with Contactile's CEO, Heba Khamis. So Heba, over to you.
Hi everyone. It's getting a bit loud where I am, so I will speak up. So be careful I don't deafen you and adjust your volumes appropriately. Hi, I'm Heba Khamis. I'm the CEO of Contactile, and I'll give you a brief introduction as to exactly what we do at Contactile, just by sharing my screen. And here we go. The human hand is a very sophisticated tool, and it's actually unrivaled in its ability to manipulate the world around us. Our hands are delicate enough to pick a raspberry without squashing it, or hold an egg without dropping or breaking it. But our hands are also quite powerful, and we can, some of us at least, carry the weight of our own body and operate heavy tools like an axe. And we do this all with very high precision and control, and we can easily move from one task to another. But I'm sure many of you have had this experience where you've tried to tie your shoelaces when your fingers are numb from the cold. A seemingly simple task that you've done a million times before suddenly becomes almost impossible. And the reason for that is that it's our sense of touch that enables our dexterity. Without our sense of touch, our hands become these clumsy instruments that really don't work very well for us. Robots are already in use in many industries to help us do those dull, dirty, and dangerous tasks that we've had to do in the past. But these robots are somewhat limited in what they can do because basically we haven't been able to replicate the human sense of touch, and therefore we have to structure the environments that these robots work in to basically match the limitations in what they can do. But we're actually facing a global workforce crisis. I'm sure you've all heard of the concept of an aging population. I think the average age of a farmer in Japan is something like over 65 years old. We're basically losing, having a smaller workforce that needs to still be able to do all these manual tasks. So the need there is for robots that can replicate human dexterity and work in the real world, not these, custom environments that we make up. But for robots to become truly advanced, they require a number of sensation, actuation, and intelligence capabilities. There are a number of companies that are experts in a number of these capabilities, except for touch sensing. So there is a lack of touch sensing technology out there, and it's this lack of touch sensing that has basically means that there's a gap in these technologies that can provide dexterity to robotics and for robots that can manipulate many objects and tools in the real world. So at Contactile, we're giving robots a human sense of touch. Our patented tactile sensors are as sensitive as human skin, and they can measure all of the same tactile properties that the human finger can, and therefore enable dexterity in robotics. So if a picture speaks 1,000 words, then a video speaks a million. So these are our tactile sensors. And basically what they're doing here is the information from the sensors enables the robot to apply the exact right amount of force to hold any of these objects. The robot or the gripper hasn't been programmed for any of these things. It's just told to grip and hold on. And even if we change the weight of the object, you can see that the gripper is adjusting in real time to that new weight and applying the correct amount of force in real time. So imagine the possibilities of not having to program a robotic gripper for every item that it handles, which is what's currently done. So our founding team, that didn't work well. Our founding team are the inventors of this tactile sensing technology. We've have varying expertise in software and electrical engineering. We've been working on the R&D for this technology for over 6 years at the University of New South Wales, and we're now spinning out the technology into our company, Contactile. We're using all of our smarts and experience to bring about a tactile revolution in robotics. There are some other sensors out there that measure various things through touch, but the key competitive advantages of our sensors is that we can detect something called incipient slip, which you can think of like partial slip, and estimate friction, which are two very key components of touch that we need for dexterity. And we can also sense all of the other tactile properties that are important for dexterity. No other commercially available sensor can measure all of these things, and there's no other sensor that can measure friction. There are also alternative gripping solutions. So, for example, you could use suction to pick things up and manipulate them, or you can use other gripping technologies without any sensation, or soft grippers, which I'm not sure if anyone's heard of, but again, our sensing technology and the gripping solutions that it enables have competitive advantage over these, because we can grip any object securely with the optimal grip force without any need for pre-programming or grip parameter tuning. So that basically enables us to just say, tell the robot to grip, and the rest is done through the sensing. So there's a huge market for this kind of technology, and currently the robotic end effector market, which is all the appendages that are attached to a robot arm, is forecast to be over $6 billion US by 2025. But this new technology is actually unlocking new applications. So it's not about fitting our technology to these existing robotic and automation solutions. It's about what more can we do with automation. And so we have a three-pronged approach to how we're going to approach this market. And the first is to sell to researchers so that we can basically ensure that our technology is embedded into new robotic devices. And we've had some success already, and we've sold development kits to a number of universities all over the world. Our second approach is to actually sell to the robotics integrators. So these are systems integrators that design custom automation solutions for their customers. And we've had feedback from a number of these integrators locally and internationally, and we'll be doing an evaluation with one of them early next year. And finally, the third approach to the market is to form channel partnerships with other robotics component manufacturers. So we've already done an evaluation with Shadow Robot Company, which is the world leading manufacturer of 5-fingered robot hands. And starting in January, we'll be doing a pilot project with Tasker Prosthetics to embed our sensors into the world's only waterproof myoelectric prosthetic hand. So this three-pronged approach is basically how we're going to penetrate every single application possible with our sensors. And the theme of today's lightning talk was meant to be deep tech is for us. So the key question is, what is this technology going to do for us and the way we work and the way we live? So the applications of this technology are so far reaching. In the oil and gas resources sectors, you can imagine remote servicing robots where you don't have to send people to offshore oil rigs to do manual tasks anymore. You could just have an autonomous robot that can do a number of manipulation tasks on the rig. In agriculture, you can use robots for harvesting and packaging of produce. In warehouse fulfillment, so imagine supermarket fulfillment, Amazon warehouse, or other fast-moving goods. Picking those online orders is an extremely manual task at the moment. It is very dull, and there's a lot of repetitive stress injuries that occur as a result of these jobs. So robots could be used to pick these online orders. In advanced manufacturing, a lot of the limitations of robotics and advanced manufacturing is the fact that the capital expenditure required to automate something is quite large and only pays back when you do the same thing in very large volume. So our technology enables you to do these things without that requirement for high volume. So we can move more towards the idea of custom and bespoke manufacturing, or on-demand manufacturing even. In prosthetics, as I've already mentioned, our sensors can be used for prosthetic hands to provide tactile feedback back to the user. So currently, you've got to be looking at the prosthetic hand to actually know that it's holding the object that you want. But with our sensors, you can then actually provide feedback to the user so they can feel what they're holding. In robotic surgery, is another application to enable the surgeon to actually feel what they're doing instead of relying on muscle memory and vision in remote surgery. in securities, defense, and emergency services. So here's a picture of a bomb disposal robot, for example. So being able to perform more tasks remotely to basically keep people out of danger. And finally, the final frontier is obviously space. So imagine autonomous and remote servicing of satellites in orbit, and one day even, you know, building infrastructure on Mars. That's the blue sky idea there. Besides being able to ask me anything now, please do get in contact if you have any questions or would like to know more about our company. We're Contactile, and we're giving robots a human sense of touch. So back to you, Mel.
That was amazing, Heba. Thank you. It's so cool to learn about all the different potential applications for your technology, and it does feel like they're almost limitless. So what we might do is, as Heba said, we're going to open it up to all of you guys. If you want to ask a question, use the Q&A function below, and I can see there are already a couple of questions coming through, which is great. But I want to start by asking you a question, Heba.
Sure.
Seeing as this is part of a STEM Careers Expo, and on behalf of all other aspiring startup CEOs, how did you become the CEO of Contactile? What led you here? And maybe a little bit about your experience spinning out from a university as well, because that's a pretty cool and unique experience. Oh, I think Heba is frozen. Might just give her a minute to...
Sorry, I got the first part of the question and missed the second part.
Yes. So a bit about what led you to becoming the CEO and what it's been like spinning out a company from university.
Oh, how long have we got? Because this is a very long answer, I think. My career has been in academia from the very start. So I did a Bachelor of Software Engineering and Medical Science at Sydney Uni many years ago now. And then I went straight from that into a PhD. So I spent 9 years at Sydney Uni and really just never wanted to leave university ever. So I went from there to an academic career at UNSW. So I've been obviously deeply embedded in research and engineering and STEM from the very beginning. And basically one of our research projects at UNSW is basically first a project inspired the development of the tactile sensors, and then that research project kind of came to a point where it was either try and get more research funding to develop the tactile sensing further, or go the commercial route and actually try and get it out there in the real world. So unfortunately, and this is a very sad state to be in, but Australia bats above or punches above their weight extremely well in research, but we don't do technology transfer very well. So one of the metrics for a researcher is always, like, even individually, as not just for their job performance, but is to see their ideas actually come to life and be manifest themselves in a product that is actually helping society. So for us, that was the goal, and the only way to do that was to spin it out ourselves. We realized very early on that there wasn't going to be too much help in terms of someone taking it off our hands and commercializing it for us. And so it kind of got to a point of, are we going to do it ourselves, or are we just going to drop it and it's going to disappear on the shelf, just like so many other research projects? And that's where we are now, is trying to execute on that and get this out there and into everybody's hands and actually functioning for society.
It must be pretty fulfilling to see something that you've spent so many years of your life, developing, now be able to come into the market. Is there anything about the process that you found particularly challenging? I mean, like you said, we do hear a lot that went maybe falling a bit behind in terms of our commercialization of research. So, I mean, you've now been through this process. What have you found most difficult, or where do you think some of the barriers have been?
I think the two biggest barriers for us, and you know, one is a common barrier for all startups, is money. You know, it's obviously takes money to get these things off the ground. You need to pay people to do things for you. In our case, because we're hardware, you need much more money because you actually need to build things, which is very expensive. But that's a common, obviously, complaint from anyone who's trying to do anything, is that we need more money. But more than that, I think in Australia, and particularly for our applications, is the Australian market is not the end goal. It's too small. So trying to access those international markets before even having a product is very challenging. And a lot of the international companies that, you know, we would like to speak to, they do have offices here in Australia, but they're sales offices. So you kind of get into this problem of, okay, if I contact an office here, I'll get a salesperson. They may forward my information to someone else, but then I have to, you know, hope and pray that that person will come back to me or not, or whatever. So getting to that, talking to the right people is, I think, one of the biggest challenges that we face.
I've heard that from a lot of the startups that we work with as well. So that also seems to be a commonality. I guess to, you know, bring a product to market, you have to have a pretty or an amazing product like this to market. You need an amazing team. So maybe could you tell us a little bit about your co-founders or your team members, and, you know, how did they join the party, and then maybe a little bit about how you see the team growing in the future?
Yeah, so we're, as I mentioned in the pitch, we're the three inventors. So we all met doing research. So Stephen and I, we met over actually maybe 8 years ago now. And we've kind of been working on various different research projects together for that time. And when we started this particular project, we kind of got as far as building a proof of concept of the sensor, and then needed to instrument it, so fit the electronics in and prove that it actually works as a functional whole. And at that point, Ben, our third founder, was actually a final year engineering student doing his honours thesis, and he joined our project to do his honours thesis. And he ended up inventing the most, you know, possibly the most critical component of the sensor, which is the instrumentation. So from there, he then also did a master's project with us, and then we got some research grant funding, and we hired him as a research engineer to continue the development. And then, you know, then we founded the company together. So it's kind of just been natural. You know, we didn't have to seek out any founders and be like, hey, we've got this new technology, and try and convince people that it is the bee's knees and that's going to, you know, revolutionize the robotics industry. It just all happened very naturally. In terms of growing the team, obviously 3 people is very small and we are stretched very, very thin. So for growing the team, I think, yeah, we're looking for anyone and with all sorts of skills, like not just in engineering, but also like, you know, marketing and business development. And yeah, it takes a village really to raise a startup. So yeah, you need all the different skills.
And so maybe people who don't have technical skills, they're not engineers or researchers, you know, if you were someone coming in, say, to start building out a marketing department, do you envisage that they would need to have a really deep understanding of the technical aspects of the business as well, and of robotics? Or is it something that, you know, maybe isn't as important?
So I don't know so much that they would require the technical knowledge, but they probably would need to understand the ecosystem. It's not a consumer product. It's not like selling, you know, fashion or, you know, or kettles or, you know, kitchen appliances. You're not selling to an end consumer. So that kind of market research that you do in that space is very different. You can't really say, oh, it's, you know, females aged 20 to 35 who are health conscious, they're the ones that are going to buy our products. Yeah. It's very different. And the way that you sell robotics is very different. So yeah, as I said, not so much a technical understanding of our sensors and the technology in robotics, but more so the ecosystem and how it functions. Yeah.
Well, we have a question here that asks, is there anything that would stand out in particular on a resume to you? And I know that you guys, I believe you have an internship program running as well. So maybe even for interns, kind of what are you looking for in particular?
Yeah, so I'm probably, this is probably not the way you should be hiring, but for me, I actually think the fundamentals are obviously fundamental. If it isn't a technical internship, then obviously there needs to be the fundamental engineering background. But apart from that, I think our technology is so different that there's not really a niche specialization that anyone's going to come forward with and be able to demonstrate that on a resume. So more so than the actual expertise, I'm looking for the interest. So it's, an interest in robotics or in prosthetics or in, pursuing a career in, whether it be mechatronics or whatever it is. And that real drive to learn, because as I said, it's not something that you would have been taught at uni anyway. This is all new. So you're going to have to learn a lot on the job. And that thirst for knowledge is really the critical thing for us. And coming from a research background, obviously I've supervised a lot of students. So I'm quite, I guess, good at nurturing that learning environment. And so it really is an internship for learning. So a lot of, some internships you're getting coffee and stuff, but this one really is about the learning. So if that's what interests you and you have that drive, then definitely come and talk to me.
Awesome. That's great to hear. Yeah, I feel like a lot of people usually get stuck photocopying things. I don't know. Do we photocopy things anymore? Probably not. We're a paperless society now.
Yeah, it's all digital. Yeah.
So we have a question here, a comment first and then question. This will have incredible potential for space exploration as light impacts sight, vacuum impacts sound, smell and taste, and navigating the environment will best be managed through touch. Has the team approached space agencies, especially as Tesla are making a spacesuit incorporating this tech?
Yeah, so we have spoken to the Australian Space Agency. We've contacted a couple of people like at NASA in the Jet Propulsion Lab and things like that. I don't know Elon Musk personally, so it's a bit hard to get through to Tesla. But yeah, so that's actually one of the big challenges is, yeah, there's these massive organizations, space agencies, companies, things like that. And that comes back to that problem that we have with talking to the right people. Yeah. So if anybody does know someone at Tesla, shoot me an email and make an introduction. I'd love it. Yeah, but we're trying to penetrate those those big companies as much as we can through like LinkedIn messaging and that kind of thing. But it is a slow process.
What have where have you had the most success in, being able to get to the right people? What's kind of worked for you so far?
I don't think there's any trends to be drawn. The sample size is so small. But yeah, I mean, that's part of it is you've just got to keep doing it because you never know when it's going to pay off. So I do a lot of LinkedIn stalking and just, trying to connect with people on LinkedIn through things like this. I will also look at, who's in attendance and, what's their job description. Would they have an interest in what we're doing, and then reaching out to them. Networking in real and for real in person is also very good. We try and do demos as well, because obviously, seeing it in action is seeing is believing, as they say. So it definitely makes much more of an impact when you do it that way. If we had the borders open and things like that, I mean, a trip to Silicon Valley or something and just going around and knocking on doors and showing them what we've done, that would definitely be something we would want to do. But yeah,
we need that demo video you played to go viral, because that was pretty cool.
Yeah, exactly. So
on this call, share Share a bit
Yeah.
about it.
So we've got a YouTube channel with a couple, I think 5 or 6 different demo videos. Jump on there, share it with everyone you know. You never know. Someone will know someone who will know someone who knows Elon Musk.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then we can invite him to Cicada as well, maybe. That'd be, if anyone.
Yeah, and see all the other cool tech.
So
Yeah.
we have another question here, a common question. So your technology is really interesting. Then any applications you're working on for robot sensors aside from grip? Playing music via plucking strings on instruments or things like that?
Yeah, so we do have like, so some of our interns at the moment that we've got them working on different little side projects that demonstrate the other uses of our sensors. So we have one intern who's working on designing a hand rehabilitation tool. So, a little thing that you hold and then you can kind of play, it links to an app and you can almost play like, a Dance Dance Revolution or Guitar Hero type app by squeezing the sensors to different levels of force. And it's basically trying to gamify the rehabilitation exercises that people have to do after a hand injury. So that's one application. We've got another intern in the past has designed like a sensorized shoe insole for monitoring gait, which is how people walk. So that's useful in some pathologies, but also useful for, obviously elite athletes and designing shoes and things like that. We've got another one working on a haptic glove. So putting the sensors on a glove so that you can actually measure how people interact with objects in, for example, in training. So imagine like when you're training a physiotherapist to do massage, like can we actually quantify that rather than telling them and then hoping that they're pressing the right amount, applying the right amount of pressure. So there's all sorts of different applications that we're exploring. Yeah.
I think that's one of the challenges, isn't it? Because like I said before, the potential applications are limitless.
Yeah.
Which one do we start with? Because as a small startup, you can't tackle all of the world's big problems.
Exactly, but these are great opportunities for interns because they get to kind of take control of an entire, self-contained project where they can actually, develop something and prototype something from scratch. So it does make for an interesting internship.
I imagine.
Yeah.
So another question on the technology, could you incorporate temperature sensors into the grips? E.g., if it extends to human interaction, is it able to then translate this and say, careful, this is hot?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There's all sorts of additional sensing that you could put on there, like, temperature. You could put proximity sensors on there so that it knows that it's approaching the object. You could put, I don't know if sound would be useful. But yeah, there's definitely additional things that we could do. This is, by the way, just for everyone on the call who doesn't experience this is the definition of scope creep. So starting with a product and trying to add as many bells and whistles as you can, that's scope creep.
Another few questions asking about the potential. This is one here about what interfacing with drones has been explored. I can see incredible advantages using this capability to perform dangerous tasks on high structures where one hand can grip.
Yeah, exactly. So our focus is all about the hand. We are really agnostic to what that hand is attached to. Is the hand attached to a person in the case of prosthetics? Is it attached to a robot in the case of robotics? Or is it attached to a drone? And, it really makes absolutely no difference to us what the mechanical thing is. The hand is our focus. Yeah.
There's one question here around internships and if they're more built around students and fresh graduates. For example, if someone had already had a long career or worked in software development for 10 years here, as the questioner has asked, they want to know if the internship program is also considered for people that are more experienced as well and maybe looking to get into the industry.
Yeah, at this point, unfortunately, no. So I probably should have prefaced this, but we are pre-investment, so we actually don't have a lot of capital to spend, which means that all of our internships are currently unpaid. And there's very strict fair work rules around unpaid internships, which means that it has to actually count towards a degree requirement. So what we're offering at the moment is internships where it actually counts towards a degree requirement, or it's counted as coursework. So I know that UTS, for example, has some programs where you can actually do unpaid internships, which count as coursework. And different different universities have different programs like that. But for example, engineers have to do industrial training as part of their degree. So an engineering student can do an unpaid internship because it counts towards their degree. But yeah, the rules are very strict on not paying people. So to fit within those rules, that's what we have to do at the moment. But definitely, in the future, once we're billionaires and are flush with money, exactly, yeah. $100 bills, yeah.
There are lots of questions here, like about the kind of more technical aspects. So there's like 5 questions in one here, but I might pick the one about, are you manufacturing everything on campus? That'd be really interesting to know.
Yeah, we are at the moment, actually. Yeah. So the only thing we're actually selling is a development kit to other researchers, and that is made completely in the labs at UNSW. So it's 3D printing, it's some hand soldering, some reflow soldering, using quite simple, not super fancy equipment. And we have a big step in our sensors is calibration. So obviously, because we're making them by hand, there's a lot of variation, so they need to be calibrated. So we have some access to some equipment that allows us to calibrate them. And yeah, so everything's very manual at the moment. Isn't it funny? We're making robots that should be able to do dextrous tasks, and we're making the sensors manually.
Hopefully that'll change soon.
Yeah. Robots that make other robots. That's the goal.
Exactly. I mean, actually, robots that make other robots. So I have kind of like a personal question here. Robotics has changed our lives in so many ways. And I think, 20, 30, 40 years ago, whenever, we were picking stock images to represent the future, it was always robots.
Yeah.
And it'd be really interesting to hear from you. I know you spoke a little bit about the limitations in your presentation, but what are the limitations? What's the big vision? Like what will robots do for us in the future? And most importantly, I think there's a real narrative around people being scared of robots and AI taking over. What's your opinion on this? How do you talk to people about this when you explain what you do and maybe they're a little bit concerned?
Yeah, so I think this idea that robots are going to take our jobs, it's somewhat true. They will take some jobs, but the jobs that they will take are the jobs that nobody wants to do in the first place. So, in Australia, for example, we have a huge labor problem for harvesting fruit and produce, right? No Australians actually want to do this job. So that's why we have a special visa to bring people from overseas to actually do this job.
And now they can't come to do it.
And now they can't come. So we're in this massive problem because, the fruit needs to be picked. Otherwise it ends up rotting on the floor, right? So how do we, make sure that any disruptions to travel and things like that don't impact our ability to produce, produce. So, so the jobs that robots essentially even to make a robot commercially viable, the jobs that it needs to do are those repetitive, boring tasks that no one else wants to do. Yeah. And so they talk about the 3 Ds: dull, dirty, and dangerous. So those are the 3 types of jobs that nobody really wants to do. And especially the dangerous ones, nobody really should be doing. Yeah. Even if they can and want to do it, it's dangerous. And therefore, the cost associated with an injury or things like it's not a risk that anybody wants to take. So those are the jobs that robotics are targeting. The other term that's used a lot in robotics is, or in terms of jobs, is hand, head, and heart. So there are jobs that are, basically take advantage of the human hand. things you do manually. There's jobs that take advantage of the brain, the head. Okay, and so those are thinking tasks. And then there's the heart jobs. Those are jobs that require empathy. And I don't think, like, I don't know, maybe if you talk to a futurist, they might have a different view on this, but I don't think we'll ever really emulate empathy in AI or in robotics. So the idea that robots will take jobs, it's true, but they will be the hand. I don't want to say hand jobs. They'll be jobs that people do with their hands. One day, maybe AI might be able to take over the head type jobs as well. But it's the heart jobs that I don't think will ever really be automated. So it's not just about taking jobs, but, you know, the opportunity to let people actually do jobs that people do the best.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think that's they're important conversations to continue having.
Absolutely. And there's all sorts of, ideas about having like if robots are going to be taking over people's jobs, then there should be a robot tax, or there should be, universal basic income and things like this. So these are massive conversations. They're huge discussions. There's no right answer just yet, but yeah, we'll work towards one.
Now, the questions are kind of jumping around a bit everywhere, sorry, but there's one question around here around funding. And so are you guys raising at the moment? How much have you raised to date? And, what have been some of the challenges around raising money? Because, I mean, that's kind of the number one challenge that
money.
Right?
Yep. So we
cash.
haven't raised anything yet. So we've been bootstrapping. We've been quite lucky. We've done 2 very generous accelerator programs. One was the CSIRO on Accelerate program, which is no longer offered, but there was a decent bit of money attached to that. And then we just finished the UNSW Founders 10X program as well. And so there was also a little bit of money attached to that. So in combination, that money plus Jobs for New South Wales MVP grant, we've managed to get this far and do some product, even prototype and product development and patent applications using those funds. We've also been very fortunate. I hate to say that COVID is a good thing, but it has definitely been provided us with opportunities that we wouldn't have otherwise had. So some of the government, like JobKeeper, for example, we've been able to access that. So yeah, all these little tiny pools of money, they all add up and have got us this far. So they're not to be scoffed at. But yeah, we are raising at the moment. Yeah, so we're talking to angel investors and VCs. Yep, it's a long process.
It's like always hustling, right?
Yeah.
Always hustling for the next thing. But it's great to hear that you've taken advantage of all the kind of the breadth of opportunities there are to get capital, especially in the early days. I think often, for early stage companies and it's different, a robotics company, you need a lot of cash, but like, there are a lot of ways that you can get funding in the really early stages, even just friends and family rounds or, whatever it is, until you get to the point where you get enough traction to then
Exactly. So for those who aren't in startups, but the biggest concern with raising capital too early is diluting your equity, which is basically how much of the company do you have control over. So if you need $1 million and you try and raise $1 million when you're not really worth anything, then you're basically giving away most of your company, and you don't want to do that at the very start, because it just means that there's no more room to move, basically. So we've tried to avoid that for as long as possible.
So someone asked how big the Contactile team is. We know there are 3 founders, and you obviously have interns working with you. What's the work environment like? What's the culture like? Do you guys, like, obviously, I guess you're scaling now thinking about scaling like a really small company, how do you scale the culture with it? How are you thinking about building your team? You know, I know you said you're looking at different skills and building out different departments. What's the roadmap for that?
Oh, that's a tough one. So because I'm an engineer, I guess I haven't given that much thought. Yeah. So we're really easygoing and very open. So yeah, I think it would, you know, as we grow and new team members come on board, I think it'll become obvious very quickly if they don't quite fit into that culture of openness. Like we speak our minds. Like if someone comes up with a stupid idea, it's just like, oh, that's not a very good idea. Like no like ill intentions, just, you know, this is why this is not a good idea, right? So we're very open, and that comes also from trust. So we've all been working together, as I said, for like, you know, me and Stephen for 8 years, and Ben as well for another, you know, 4 or 5 or 6 years. So obviously that comes with the trust that we've built up over that time. So it's actually going to be very interesting when it's an outsider coming into that, how easy it will be to kind of bring them into that trust circle. For us and for them to feel part of that trust circle as well. So it's definitely going to be challenging, but we have had a lot of mentorship through the accelerators we've done, and they do talk a lot about, you know, high performing teams, and that, yeah, trust is probably the most important thing. And not just trust to, you know, talk about, you know, ideas and things like that, but also to talk about personal challenges. Because, you know, people are people. They've got other things going on in their lives that can easily impact, you know, their performance or their work or things like that. And the trust required for them to speak up about those kind of maybe personal challenges, and the empathy in the rest of the team that needs to be present to be able to help people overcome things, or try and, you know, alleviate some of the issues that might be confounding these things at work and things like that, is super important.
Especially in a year like this year. I mean, you know, I think inherently one of the big challenges of startups is that they are challenging environments, you know.
Yeah.
I think joining a company from the early stages, you know, you guys are really just at the beginning of your, you know, journey. You're going to grow so much, and so being able to come in early and help shape that culture and that team is such an exciting opportunity.
Yeah.
Look, I think I'm conscious of time. I don't want to take up too much of your time, Heba, but maybe to finish off, can you just tell us what your grand vision for Contactile is? Where do you see yourselves kind of in the next 5 years or the next 10 years? What are your hopes and dreams for the company and the technology?
Take over the world. Yeah, I mean, my dream is to see tactile sensors being a default in robotic installations. So there was a time when it was like, you know, you have a robot arm and a gripper. That's the default. Now you see vision is absolutely a default. Like robotic vision is in every installation, like, you know. So in the next 10, maybe 5 or 10 years, I want to see that tactile sensing is also just a default. Because, you know, it only makes things better. It can't make things worse. And so, you know, it just needs to be in the forefront of people's minds that, oh, actually, yeah, tactile sensing is a thing. It does exist. And we need to embed it into all of our installations. And that's what success looks like to me. I mean, you know, if
good.
Sorry?
That sounds pretty good.
Yeah. It's challenging because, like I said, it's not available yet. So there's a little bit of education required as well to, like, the systems integrators and to the, you know, developers of robotic systems, is that, you know, well, we've done it for so long without tactile sensing, so why don't we just continue? Like, well, no, this has advantages. There's definitely value add to be made by having these tactile sensors. So
it sounds almost like there needs to be a cultural shift almost as well when you're educating people about, you know.
Exactly.
you.
Exactly. So it's exactly the cultural shift is between bespoke solutions and general purpose robotics. That's what we're talking about. So, you know, you either customize the crap out of the entire environment so that that bespoke solution can work, or you stick a general purpose robot into the existing environment and get it to do the work. So it's that shift.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Your technology, your company are very exciting, and we'll be following your journey very closely. And if there is anyone listening, and a VC or an angel investor, please have lots of money.
Yes.
Thank you again for joining us. And guys, we didn't get to all the questions today, but there'll be a form up on our website where you can contact Heba directly and ask her any of your final burning questions. So thanks again for your time.
Awesome. Thanks for chatting. It's been fun.